Okay, perfect. All right, so where we start off last time is we start off by discussing the importance of joy, why joy is so significant in serving Hashem, and it's like the greatest, almost like filter or lens or ingredient in avodas Hashem, in fulfilling our potential in this world and in serving Hashem. And if a person is down or sad or not happy, then it's very hard for them to serve Hashem with joy, right? Like it makes it very, 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 sorry, shaking the screen too much. There you go. It makes it really difficult to serve Hashem and to do things properly when we're feeling down or sad or depressed or anxious or nervous, all of those emotions that are not negative. And so the Alter is going to kind of give practical tools how when we change the way we think about certain things, then we can actually avoid getting to a negative emotional state and basically activate happiness within ourselves. Like, right, this old debate of like, what is happiness? Is it a pursuit? Is it something we get? Is it something we do? And we know that happiness, let's say I've had children try to convince you, if I just had a smartphone, my life would be happy, right? You ever had if I just had a car, if I just had my license, fill in the blank, where we sometimes tell ourselves, if I just lose 10 pounds, or if I just get this job that I want, or if I just, whatever fill in the blank is, then I will be happy. And we all know that that's really kind of not true. It's just not true. It's not what happiness is. It's not what feeds and creates happiness, and it's not. And we have to understand that being truly happy, settled, it's a journey, and it's not a pursuit though. And it's obviously a state of mind. It's not something we have or we own. Yeah, go ahead, Leora.
No, I don't have anything.
Oh, I thought you said something. Okay. Was it Karen? Okay. So what is it? So obviously we have to work on the way we think and how that affects us, and also to understand why sadness and depression, or what the Alter Rebbe will discuss the difference between atzvos and marur, sadness and bitterness, and what's that difference and how they interplay. What's a productive level of sadness? What's a non-productive level of sadness? And is there space? So is Alter Rebbe expecting that we just go around happy like Pollyanna, unrealistic? My kids are telling me that their teacher had this discussion between an optimist, a pessimist, and a realist. And she was trying to get them to think which one's the best. Is the optimist the best? Is the pessimist the best? Is the realist the best, right? So what does the Alter Rebbe expect of us? Only happiness? So we actually know, and then also in this section, Alter Rebbe is going to kind of troubleshoot what could prevent us from being in the best state of mind, and how to use atzvos and marur, sadness and bitterness, in different ways to, again, as fuel to help us grow as people. Because at the end of the day, as we said in the beginning, there's a constant struggle between my potential, my inner self, my outer self, my potential, how I could self-actualize, my task in this world, the good I could do in this world, and negative energy that's always going to try to drag me down and prevent me from operating to the best of my ability. And we all could see how toxic negative energy, look around you on the news, if you steep yourself too much in the news, it could literally immobilize you. I find for myself, if I'm paying attention to the news too much, I am immobilized. So it's a really good preventative for us maximizing our potential, or being able to fulfill our tafkid, or be able to do good in this world. Okay, so we opened up last week. We got through 3 main primary texts in the beginning of this section. We did in lesson 4, we did text 1, text 2, and I actually think we were up to text 3. Yeah, we're up to text 3. So
yes.
We did 1 and 2. Okay, Karen, I'm glad you're keeping track. I try, you know what I got? These handy dandy sticky things. So finally, little things that make life easier and successful. Leora, I feel like you probably have a lot of those nearby that you're using. Like, knowing your accountant mind, it's like part of your system, yes? Watching how Talia operates with your system. I get it. Okay. So the Alter Rebbe starts off by saying, basically, look, if you look an overview of text 1, is that obviously there's a cardinal principle, and whenever we're challenged or we're struggling, is that whoever, let's say there's a wrestling match and there's 2 people wrestling, the person who's sluggish, if someone is sluggish or downtrodden or slows down, they're not going to have the energy, the tenacity, the drive to be victorious. So the Alter uses that analogy to discuss that if we have, let's say, within us, and even, our nefesh habahamis, we have a negative tendency, a behavior, a character trait. We have a bad habit. We have something that we're struggling with, right? And we want to overcome it. If we are sluggish or downtrodden, or like, we're not going to have the strength and the tenacity and the drive and, whatever, to overcome or to keep that behavior in check. And ask yourself, and I could speak for myself, when I am completely overwhelmed, or I'm very physically tired or emotionally tired because like heavy news or a lot of intense stuff, what happens? It affects us physically. It affects us psychologically. It affects our behavior. The times when let's say, will lose control, and actually later the Alter will discuss the difference between losing control and giving up control. The times when we give up control, because at the end of the day, it's kind of a choice. The times when we give up control, usually there are other layers that are kind of taking away our strength. When you're in a good space, emotionally, psychologically, and physically, you had enough sleep and you exercise, and spiritually you've dove into, you're nurturing yourself. You're giving tzedakah so you feel like your efforts are doing something, like you're making a difference in the world. When you're in your A game, in a sense, you're not going to stoop to the lowest common denominator, right? It's when we're in a weaker state that our worst self kind of comes to the surface. So think to yourself of the last time, and maybe none of you did this, but you lost your cool, right? Or think of whatever character, you were sluggish or you were lazy, or a lot of times it's when we're not fully aligned. Now, so the Alter goes in quote one to explain how in order, and then this is the line that we kind of got stopped by, and I encourage you to watch class 8, like the full thing, because it was a very practical hour. We talked about basically that the Alter basically kind of sets a bar that will derive joy and with an open heart that is unblemished by any trace of worry or sadness in the world. So this kind of stopped us. And if we think 2 weeks ago, the world was full of worry and sadness, goodness gracious, we've certainly taken a left turn, and there's added layers to the story, right? Just globally, turn on the news or scroll Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media, Twitter outlet you're using, or I wouldn't even say turn on the news, but turn on the news. How could it be? There's so much chaos. How could it be that we could even get to a place with any trace of worry, sadness in the world? It almost feels like the Alter Rebbe said this is Sefer Shabbanan, right? The book for the intermediate, the person who's struggling, the person who's working, the person who's trying to overcome, the person who's trying to grow. Is it ever possible to get there? And in a way, and this is where we kind of got stopped, and we evolved into quite a conversation. In a way, that bar seems so unattainable and unrealistic. It's almost like, okay, so what am I doing here? I'll never be able to get there. Does anyone think here that they'll ever be able to not have any worry or sadness? It's part of the human condition. It's a natural and normal emotional reality. It's part of our journey as humans, right?
We do need something to strive for. I mean, you do have.
Meaning, like you're saying, is if everything's always like, oh, this is wonderful and happy and this works, then we don't improve things. I was just speaking to a young couple, and they're newly married. They're married about a year, and she was telling me this is something that's going on in their marriage. It bothers her a little, and we're talking through it. And she's like, I really worry. And I'm like, look, real worry, if you're immobilized or it's stopping you from functioning as a human being, that's a problem. If it's something this is something that's stressful and worrisome and we need to work on it, then that's fuel for growth. And we all couldn't understand that when we work on something that's a struggle or that's difficult for us, or we need to overcome, even if it's really, really hard, we come out of it stronger, healthier people, right? It's like what we were talking about, seeing the opportunity in this time period that we're in, right? Of this opportunity to truly come out of this with some better good, a greater good. And that's on a personal level, that's on a global level, that's on a micro level, a macro level, etc. So how do we do this realistically? How is this even possible? So Lior, you're saying that there's space for sadness because sadness accomplishes something. But we also know that sadness can completely immobilize you. I've seen students who are depressed. I've worked with them extensively. Or there are days that I'm just feeling down. Now, thank God, I don't suffer from depression. And I always said, the Alter Rebbe is not gonna replace psychotherapy or medication or tools that people need to get themselves the help they need to operate to the best of their ability. But a lot of these principles and these tools, when used in tandem with proper help, a person can get out of it. And I've seen students who are in a very dark and unhealthy place, and they start to learn and they start to grow and they start to figure out how to channel that pain or darkness and use it as fuel, and amazing things happen. So we talked about, what does it boil down to? We talked about revealed good and concealed good. And we said, how is it that we can understand that the goal, of us not being sad? And here we introduced this, hold on a second, this specific concept of revealed good and concealed good. What's revealed good and concealed good? We said, look, if you give a bond, it's a 3-year-old's birthday party, and you give them a savings bond. They're going to rip it up and throw it in the garbage or take a marker and color on it. They have no appreciation for what it is. Give it to a mature adult. They'll understand with time, with patience, that bond will mature and they'll be able to cash it in for money, right? You give a 2-year-old a toy truck, they're going to be happy. Which one's more worthwhile or more valuable, the toy truck or the bond? We all know, to the 2-year-old, with their subjective perspective of value, toy truck for sure, right? The lens that they're seeing things through, for sure, the toy truck. But we all know that the bond is worth far more fiscally as it matures. So in a sense, that's an analogy that's great to give. Like you ask a little kid, do you want 5 quarters now, or do you want 10 pennies? You ever did that with a little child? Do you want 10 pennies or 5 quarters? Or do you want 5 quarters now or $1 tomorrow? You ever tried that? Right? That the good that they could see at that moment is different than what we would know it's good. And so this premise that the Alter Rebbe is going to kind of go into now is understanding that everything that God does is actually good. Now that's a huge, huge foundational belief that Kabbalah and Chassidus give us as it's a linchpin in Jewish philosophy. How do you live it? It's great to know. Theoretically, I could put it as a beautiful slogan. There are there's a sage in the Talmud known as Nachamish Gamzu who always say Gamzu Tov, this is for the good. See the good in things. There's tons of stories in the Talmud and Gemara that tell us sages who went through trying times, who saw the good in it. And we can even understand this line looking at our own lives at times when we thought something was a disaster, but it was fuel for something greater. Anyone want to share a time where you felt something was really not good, but it was actually good, and you couldn't see it within that moment that you were in? I could tell you that before we moved to College Station, that last year in New Jersey was such a challenging situation. It was just challenging. And moving down, and we didn't know a soul. We met one student on Facebook beforehand. We showed up. We had, all the money we had made in New Jersey. We had the shirts on our back, and all that money went into buying the books and buying the tables. It felt very overwhelming, but it led to the greatest growth. I look at 13 years, so we're almost at the 14th anniversary of Chabad A&M. It's a miracle. So there are times that it's those biggest, darkest challenges lead to the greatest light. And a lot of us could see that. And I actually just was talking to one of the moms who's not on here now. So Pam, who's usually on here. So the reason she's not on here, she became a grandmother.
Mazel tov.
Yes, she's in Irvine with the new mommy and the new daddy and the new beautiful baby which is so special. She's a grandmother for the first time, so it's really, really special. Yeah, it really is a special milestone. But we were talking, she went over this, she's looked, they're in labor now, what, like she asked me, is there any Tehillim to say anything? I said, first of all, give tzedakah. Second of all, say your daughter-in-law's chapter of Tehillim, which is so beautiful that she wanted to send those kind of spiritual gifts to her daughter-in-law. And then I said to her, and remember, she said, but it's, labor, it's so intense. And I said to her, it's so intense. It's such intense pain, because think of what's going on at that moment during labor. Literally, you are physically, the physical manifestation or the physical platform to bring a spiritual light, a soul, a godly divine soul into the world. As intense as that is spiritually, that's how intense it is physically. That intensity aligns. So when we understand, often at times the most challenging things we're going through are actually the greatest opportunity for growth. And the question is, can we understand that? Can we see failure that way? Can we see success that way? Can we see when we're in a dark place, when we're in a scary place? And I could go on probably just for an hour discussing stories when, as an organization, things seem so like, how are we going to go pick up the pieces from here, or whatever. But we always know that this is a darkness leads to light. The challenges that we're in lead to the greatest growth. And so we have to remember, when we're in that challenge, that it's actually what we call concealed good. It's good comes into the world in different paradigms, the one that we understand and the one that God understands. And the classic example that I gave last time we learned was, you walk by and you see a mom holding down you see a mother holding down a child, and someone's about to stab the child. You'd say, well, it's crazy. But meanwhile, either it's a surgeon or it's a doctor with immunization, right? And for Karen and Leora, I'm sure if you remember the first time you had to hold down your first child for their first shot.
Yes.
It's like gut-wrenching, heartbreaking. As a mother, you're like, it's so hard. It's like so difficult, right?
And you feel like they're going to remember it for the rest of their lives.
Right, Karen, how about bringing your son for his circumcision?
Oh, I couldn't be in there. I couldn't.
Leora, right? Is that a feeling ever?
Yeah.
You're like, it's good for them. Thousands and billions of babies for thousands of years have done this, and they're going to be fine, logically, but emotionally. But there's revealed good and good. So it's good. It is good. Of course, the circumcision is good. It's a bond with God. You're welcoming this child into the covenant of Avraham Avinu since 3,500 years, right? It's more, right? Where the 5,000 was a long time, 4,000 plus years, right? So we know it's good, but it's painful and it's challenging. And if you all know the feeling, because you both have sons. Mimi doesn't have a son yet, right, Mimi? But she can imagine. She'll just imagine for a minute. She'll trust us. So that's the next idea that the Alter Rebbe says. In text 2, the Alter Rebbe says, it's sound advice have been offered from our sages, that how do we get rid of sadness and any trace of worry? And the Alter Rebbe goes on, very practical, worry about worldly matters, meaning how much money's in the bank, your physical health, children, you're worried about this child is struggling with this thing, health, livelihood. I was speaking to a friend, and her teenager who's home for quarantine is acting up like nobody's business. And she's like, each kid is their own, like, I worry about this one, and I worry about that one, and I worry about this, and we worry, right? And the Alter Rebbe thinks, and so I really love that in this little passage number 2, the Alter Rebbe is like, it's very practical worry, which is probably why I love this section of Tanya so much, because Alter was like, I get it. You're going to worry about your health. You're going to worry about your livelihood. You're going to worry about your children. You're going to worry about your health. You're going to worry about other people, friends, people you love. We worry. And so the Alter goes on, the Talmud explains that one has to accept, accept the challenges with joy. And that's a high level, obviously. Same as the joy that's visible and obvious good. And now, the reason the Gemara, the Talmud, gives us so many stories of sages who managed to do that is because why? It's a very high level of faith in Hashem. To be able to see challenges is good also. The same level of joy as a wedding. How as a simcha. Yeah, the Alter Rebbe is saying it's a goal. it's a goal. And then the Alter Rebbe goes on to explain that for it is also good, even though it doesn't appear good to our eyes, and there's a whole hidden world, the higher world, higher than this revealed world. We talked about Chassidus, so we said there's 4 worlds, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya, and Atzilus, the highest one. And we said we're in this world. And there's 4 worlds, and anything that happens has to go through this series of those different worlds in order to come into this world, through filters, through veils, through different manifestations. And so, and I honestly encourage you to probably watch the other class because we really spent a lot more time on this. But revealed good and concealed good, I feel like we can't go to the next part of the lesson without like covering this to some extent. Okay, so now Dr. is going to go on and explain that, let's say, okay, we can understand everything God does is good. It's a high level. It's something to strive for. It's revealed good. It's concealed good. We can even understand through our own examples of our own lives how there are times when we think something is bad and it ends up being good. So these are all theoretics that we can embrace, even if they're hard. But we can put them in our toolbox as tools that we can reach into our toolbox and draw them into our lives. We can do that. However, now the Alter Rebbe is going to go on to discuss why is it so important to do so, because why is negativity and sadness so destructive? Why does it prevent us? And the Alter Rebbe is going to go on to explain this fascinating vicious cycle of guilt, like you do something wrong and you feel guilty over it. But where does that guilt lead you? Does it lead you to overcoming and not doing that again, or does it lead you to degrading yourself and making yourself feel worse, shame, and then you indulge again, and then guilt again, and this whole vicious cycle begins again? So I'm trying to think of like a good example in life, and I'm not so sure I have the best example. Okay, let's say I'll give you this is a classic example out there because in Tanya. Let's say you're davening. You're talking to Hashem. It's time to dive and talk to Hashem. Okay, you're carving out the time. It's important to you. You want you as a woman, as a mother, as a giver, you want to carve out this important time. And while you're doing it, you're thinking of your shopping list or the laundry or how mad you are at your sibling or how mad you are at your child or your husband, or you're aggravated, or you walk by and you see a pile of dishes and you just cleaned it, whatever gets you in the wrong mind space. So you have 2 choices at that moment. Whoa, I see it, that negative feeling pops in, but I'm not making space for it. Not here, right now, realign back to where I need to be. Or I could say, whoa, I'm in the middle of talking to Hashem and all I'm thinking is negativity, or all I'm thinking is things I shouldn't be thinking. I'm thinking about the bills, I'm thinking about the cake I need to make, I'm thinking about my menu, I'm thinking, what kind of person am I that I'm in the middle of talking to the King of all kings? I'm in this moment of prayer with Hashem, and that's all that's going on in my mind. I am such a loser. I know so many other people who could daven better than me. Why would God even want to hear prayers from someone like me who's such a loser, who can't focus? Now you see the difference? One leads you further down the rabbit hole of negativity, and one you could pivot, realign, head in a different direction. I hear you, I see you, I acknowledge you, move forward. Negative thought, you came into my brain, you're here, but now's not the time to deal with you. I'll call you later. We'll deal with that negativity later. And you go back to davening. That's productive. That embarrassment for not being in the right mindset when you're talking to Hashem, okay, that leads to productivity. Whereas the other one leads to negativity. Because now I just spent an extra 5 minutes berating myself, talking down to myself. And really, if you understand a lot of us, the narrative, the storyline that we have that goes through our heads about ourselves or about others we love, and how non-productive a negative storyline is. And you know what's interesting? When I was talking to my friend about her teenager that was really, really challenging, and I said, you need to change the storyline. It got stuck in a negative rut and in a negative cycle, and the child needs wins in their life right now. They're clearly contending with some very high level stress, and that's why they're acting out. We need to change the story. And you know what? We need to do it for ourselves. We need to do it for those we love. And we need to do it in our relationship with our Judaism. Because often at times we could say, oh, that's not for me. I'm not so, times that I'm not Jewish enough for that. What do you mean you're a Jew? You're connected to 613 mitzvot like anyone else. Judaism was for Moses, Judaism for you, Judaism for me. All equal, right? So our mind and the negative thoughts that go through our mind can hold us back and keep us in a negative, vicious cycle. Can anyone share with me thoughts of ideas of any parallel in their lives where they feel like they could totally relate to how negativity can lead them and keep them in a negative space? Anyone? Leora, it looks like you're thinking.
Yeah, it's not coming to me now.
I hear you. Okay, we'll read inside the Alter Rebbe's words, quote 3, and we'll see the Alter Rebbe's words, and maybe you'll have some good examples. Or Karen, also, I know. And by the way, that example could be for yourself, it could be for your child, it could be for anyone that you know, where you see that pattern of guilt. That's actually what I told the mom, was your child is stuck in this negative pattern, and it's almost like their behavior is self-fulfilling. And so they can't see themselves differently. And you and your husband have to call the child out in a healthy, productive way, reassure the child, and you also have to change the narrative in your heads to help your child change the narrative in their head. It's hard work, but it's certainly worth it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anyone want to read text 3 on page 68? That's where we're up to.
I can read it.
Thank you, Leora.
As for sadness connected with spiritual matters, one is in freeing one from it. This is a time of obvious.
Hold on, you're cutting out. Leora, are you cutting out to anyone or just to me?
Karen, can you hear me? Mimi, can you hear me?
Now I could. You got cut off before.
Oh, weird. I don't know why. I can try again. If not, someone
try
else
again.
can.
Okay. You did such a good job. Thank you.
As for sadness connected with spiritual matters, one must seek ways and means of freeing oneself from it. That this applies to the time of prayer is obvious, for one must pray to Hashem with joy and gladness of heart. But even if one is occupied in business or worldly affairs, if there should descend upon him any sadness or anxiety about spiritual matters during his business affairs, it is certainly a trick of the evil inclination in order to lure him afterwards into lusts, God forbid, as is well known. For if it were not so, whence would genuine sadness, one that is derived from love or fear of Hashem, come to him in the midst of his business affairs?
Okay. What's the Alter Rebbe giving an example? The Alter Rebbe saying, you want to know if this is productive? Does it lead you to a productive place? Meaning, when you're davening and suddenly business affairs come into your mind, or negative thoughts come into your mind, and negative thoughts could be distracting, could be negative about yourself, negative about others, things that are what the Alter Rebbe describes as machshavas zaros, which literally means foreign thoughts that don't belong where they are right now. The Alter Rebbe says, you want to know if they're real, meaning I'm supposed to be dealing with them right now? When you were doing your business dealings, did it come into your mind? No, you were very focused on your business deal. Now that you're talking to Hashem, now it's here. For sure coming from a negative place. For sure the act of evil inclination, negativity, because it's distracting you from what you need to do right here and right now, being present in the moment of tefillah, prayer. And the Alter Rebbe goes on to describe how if you want to understand what to do with these negative thoughts and where can I make them productive, how do I make these negative thoughts productive thoughts? And here the Alter Rebbe will kind of outline basically a plan. Number one, check in, when do these thoughts cross my mind? Thoughts of mitzvot that I need to improve on, personality or character traits I need to improve on myself or others. When do they come into my mind? Is it an appropriate time? If it comes into my mind when it's in an appropriate time, right away, probably something suspicious. So what do we do about it? Do we ignore it? Do we always just pretend that everything's good and my personality is fine and I have no issues and there's no mitzvah I'm struggling with? Absolutely not. Of course not. That's in denial. That's not facing yourself. That's not being able to grow, right? So what does Alter Rebbe say? There is a tool that Hasidim have, and here's another tool in our toolbox, and the tool is called Cheshbon HaNefesh. Cheshbon HaNefesh, for fancy tool, is called self-assessment. Self-assessment. And if you open the prayer at night and you read it in English, the nighttime prayer, the Shema prayer before bed, Kriya Shema Alamita, the one that you're supposed to say before you go to bed, such incredible tools of self-assessment there for Cheshbon HaNefesh. That's the right time to be thinking about, here was my day, was it productive, where could I have improved, what do I need to do better? Perfect. Cheshbon HaNefesh, the right thing at the right time. Oh, now I'm supposed to be doing something good and I'm caught up with negative thoughts and negative feelings, negative ideas, for sure the wrong time. For sure not the right time. Then you know it's not productive. And the Alter Rebbe says when you kind of schedule an appointment with yourself to address this issue. Okay, let's say I noticed a mean streak in me, okay, or a lazy streak in me, and I know I need to overcome it because it's preventing me from doing Torah mitzvahs. Or let's say I noticed self-deprecation that I'm saying I'm not good enough to do that mitzvah. Like, oh, I'm not Jewish enough or kosher enough to have a kosher home. It's too big. It's too much for me. It's negative. I'm holding myself in a negative space. I'm not able to grow. Or that mean streak that I noticed. When do I notice it? Can I do something about it? Is it productive? Make an appointment with yourself to meet up with yourself and to address it. And half the time, who's going to show up for the meeting? Right? But the idea being that then when we do it in a productive way, it leads to marirut. Mar from the word maror, bitter. Sadness holds us back. We just feel sad. We feel heavy. We feel down. We feel depressed. We feel non-productive. Marirut, bitterness can lead to what? Greatness, growth. And we even talked about this in the past, but Miriam's name, the great prophetess Miriam, her name was Mar from the word bitter. And we said that she tapped into her essence of her neshama, a different definition of self, and she used that bitterness for what? For Marie, to rebel against the status quo reality of her life. And we all have that in us, that potential. Not to get stuck at sadness, because sadness just holds us back. And sadness is immobilizing. When something sad happens and we feel sad, we can't. Now, I just want to make this very clear. I could do that for my own sadness. I could never look at your sadness and say, oh, get a hold of yourself, do a self-assessment, find the right time to address this. Come on, then I'm just a cold-hearted human, right? But for myself, productive negativity or a negativity that's going to take me down a downward spiral. Does that make sense, Karen, the difference between the two? I don't know if Karen's here. Mimi, does it make sense so far? Yeah, go ahead.
I lost you. It froze. I couldn't hear one word you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did it make sense?
No, my internet's going weird. I didn't hear what you said.
Okay, we're talking about the difference between sadness and bitterness. That bitterness could lead to growth. Sadness just holds you back and makes you immobilized. And that when you're feeling like you're not reaching your potential and you need to do something, let's say in your area with a relationship with someone, or in your home life, or at work, or even within your own health and well-being, you notice you're not doing what you need to do. Sadness will just keep you at that place, but I feel bitter about it, I'm frustrated about it. I will find tools to get out of it.
Okay.
Does that make sense a little bit, the difference?
Yes.
Okay. Does it make sense on how to apply those two? And we said that the idea of making an appointment with yourself, meaning taking the time to really address in a productive manner. What am I struggling with? What can I work on? How can I work on it? And we even mentioned that at the bedtime shemaz, actually, there's a custom called the Cheshbon HaNefesh, where we're meant to really think of the day. I have to say, as a parent, many, many times when I want to help a child address a certain either behavior or habit or an event that happened in the home that was toxic, child smacked or bit or whatever, didn't follow, whatever it is, I really try not to address it right then and there. And I try to go later on in life, not later on in life, later on in the day, later on in the week, not at that opportune moment. Not at that moment, find an opportune moment. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Because sometimes when we are approaching things at the wrong time, human nature, we get defensive. You ever had someone want to teach you something and they come to you at the wrong way at the wrong time and you just put up a wall and you get defensive and you feel like you don't feel heard, you don't feel understood? It's very common human experience. We all go through it at some point in our life, whether it was a teacher, a parent, a sibling, a husband, we understand it. A child, we can understand it for ourselves. So,
But
yeah.
doesn't bitterness also sometimes, I know people this way, where they don't move past that?
In what sense? What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I can only speak like for my mom, okay?
Yeah.
She is and always has been a bitter human being, and that's just the way she is.
Right. So she may just either have had experiences or it may be just her genetic hardwiring. We come into the world. Remember earlier, Karen, we were talking about how everyone is compiled of those 7 emotive attributes.
Yes.
She may have a little bit more of, let's say, gevura, strength and severity. It may be literally just her genetic code that she was never given the tools to overcome it. We all have our genetic hardwiring. We all have our character traits that, when unchanneled and unfettered, can lead us to a very toxic place. Every single one of our character traits that we have, even ones that seem super righteous, right, can hold us back. It's what we do with it. Now, I have to say, most likely, you know, I was having this conversation with my mother-in-law, and she's in her 70s. She said, you know, your generation has a gift. And I said, what do you mean? She said, my generation, you either knew how to parent, you didn't know how to parent. You came with traumas from the war. You came with trauma from just trying to survive. You either knew what you were doing or you messed up. She said, now your generation has so much knowledge out there. There's so much, like, she's like, either it was your nature to be a good, nurturing parent or you didn't. Now I think nowadays, even if I know I'm like you said, a bitter personality, there are tools that if I want to overcome bitterness, I can. And it's something I really try to work on with myself and with my children, is to be able to own the character that Hashem gave us, and learn, even when I remember when a young child was super stubborn, and say, this is a midah, a character trait that Hashem gave you. And when you learn how to use this, you will go far in life. Right now, it's getting you in a lot of trouble. Kicked out of class, parents mad at me, fights with my siblings. Right now, it's a bad character trait, or it looks bad. But inherently, is stubbornness bad? No, stubbornness is determination. Stubbornness is grit. Stubbornness is drive. Our job as parents and as nurturers is to help our children work on those character traits, not to shape them to be who we want them to be, who their potential is to be. Not control them to get the outcome we want.
Right.
So chances are your mother, between her life experiences and traumas, and no one having that knowledge, foresight, and mindset to like nurture and nourish her, she wasn't able to use that part of her character trait for good. Karen, I'm going to ask you a challenging question. Is there any way that you can see her bitterness being used for good?
That's a difficult question because I haven't spoken to her for a long time, 5 years, something like that. I don't know.
But it's a good question. The reason I'm
asking, it's a good question. Yeah, I'm thinking.
And I don't you don't even have to answer it. The reason I'm sharing the question with you, because it's a good question to ask, because actually that's one of the things I told that mom last night. that I was talking to, is when she was certain parts of things that her daughter was saying to her. And I said to her, what your daughter is saying, she's not saying it the right way. She's not saying it in a polite way. She's being as nasty and aggressive and mean as can be. She's not asking for what she needs, but what she's saying is, help, I don't feel right.
Right.
Help, my life is out of control. And what she's saying is, I need you now. I need a different type of relationship than my siblings have. The kid kept saying to the mother, you don't respect me. I don't behave this way elsewhere because other people respect me. Or she'd see her husband, her mother and her father sitting together, and she'd be like, oh, I'm not wanted here because I'm not, old enough. I said, do you see what she's saying to you? She's saying, I want a different type of relationship with you, a mature one. And the mother's like, whoa, I wasn't able to hear that out because her behavior was so aggressive that I couldn't even hear what was beneath the surface.
Right, and I get that because I went through that with my second daughter, where I had to take a lot of steps back to then really think exactly and then readdress things. But with my mom, it's different, I guess.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's easy because also you were the child raised by this. And, honestly, knowing you, Karen, you have a very warm and loving and kind nature. And you exude that. When you spend time with you exude, it like spills over. And your experience maybe with your mother is maybe what took you to manifest, like become a different version as a mom yourself.
Yes.
Right?
I tried to do everything she didn't do.
Right. So first of all, by the way, we can see revealed good and concealed good. And I know your children to know that you've invested so much in our incredible humans. But I bet you could look genetically at other people who have maybe parts of her nature that went unchanneled and unnurtured parts of that nature, and they were nurtured and it was channeled in the right way. And it was fuel for them to be exceptional.
Yeah, my uncle, her brother.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So why am I saying this? Why is this important to understand? Because within ourselves we have that, right? Within ourselves we have that. And the people we're going to meet, we're always going to, you may love your husband so wonderfully, but there are parts of him that are really annoying or may really bother us. And we have to be able to see the good, we have to see the thing, we have to be able to not react, we have to be able to see the potential and self-assess and make the right time to do it, the right time to address it, and in the right way, because otherwise it leads to a very vicious cycle. Now the author is going to explain that the vicious cycle is guilt and shame. And here's two other pieces of the puzzle where guilt and shame are futile. They're a waste of energy. I try not to feel guilty for the things I do wrong. I may feel bad, and I try not to live with regrets. I try to correct them. Because guilt and shame are toxic energy, and they just don't lead to healthiness. They just don't. When you feel ashamed about something you're doing or do, it's not going to lead you not to do it. You have to understand, like make it a point with yourself. Why am I doing this? What's wrong? What's right? What can I do differently? Right? And that's within ourselves. And we have to, that's where we have to check in with ourselves. So look at text 4, and if anyone could read text 4, anyone who has it in front of them wants to read, this is fascinating, obviously.
Do you want me to read? I don't know if Karen has her book or if Mimi has a book.
Just, Leora, take it away.
Okay.
Our designated reader.
Okay. Whether this depression caused by feelings of guilt over his past settles upon him during his service of Hashem in Torah study or prayer, or when he is occupied with other things, this is what he should consider. Now is not the proper time for genuine sadness or worry, even over grave sins. God forbid. For that, one must set aside opportune times when the mind is calm to reflect on the greatness of Hashem against whom he has sinned, so that thereby his heart will truly be rent with genuine bitterness.
Okay, so now wait, the Alter Rebbe is saying that there is space for genuine bitterness. Marirot, what does that do? When I feel guilty, then I'm stuck at what I did. Feel so guilty. Okay, I'm stuck in that space of that negative thing. If I'm ashamed because I know I'm better than that, or I know I have greater potential, that can lead to what I want to do differently. So when we hit something where we don't approve of ourselves, or we want to check on ourselves and we don't think we're living to the optimal potential that Hashem created us, which one is better, guilt or shame? Well, we have to be careful. Shame in a productive manner, I am ashamed, like even let's say with our kids, to say, how could you do that? What were you thinking? How could you do that? That leads to, that's just embarrassment. That's not going to help the child. But to say to a child, you are better than that. I believe that you can do better. That's productive.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with the child within us, guys, ladies. The same thing within us. We have a child within. And we have to make sure that we are nurturing and giving the child within what it needs so that we can be productive. And you notice the Alter Rebbe uses the words, the calmness.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, take the time. Take the time to think, where am I holding? Check in with myself. What can I do better? What are parts of my character traits? And there's certain moments that we could do that. I know for me, let's say my 40th birthday was a few weeks ago, and I really went into this birthday with a little bit of introspection of okay, what's been with me for 40 years that I don't want to take into the next 40 years? But that's productive. But imagine I spent the whole time beating myself up for the thing that I couldn't overcome, and I'm already at the stage and I still couldn't overcome it. That's not productive. Does that make sense? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I can't see if it makes sense. You could just nod. Okay. All right. So in order to do this, in order to have this joy, and we're going to keep going, because I think we could let's at least introduce text 5, and then we'll continue with text 7. Sorry, yeah, we'll do text 6 next week, but let's at least do text 5. Because we're going to get into tools. Okay, this is great goals, but how do I actually do that? It's a great goal to not have any worry or doubt or fear. It's a great goal not to feel guilty and go down the negative cycle. It's a great goal to make a time to self-assess that, okay, shoot, that's nice. Now I need to be able to do this, which is why I always say that Tanya is so practical. And Mimi, you'll probably know this, having been raised in Chabad schools. I don't think that in our schools we do a good enough job helping our own learn how practical Tanya is.
Right.
It's a subject, it's a philosophy, but how it's this incredible toolbox of incredible tools to help us navigate all aspects of life. We somehow sometimes miss the boat.
Yep.
So that's why we're here. Okay. Lior, you get to read text 5, and then we'll summarize that and wrap it forward.
Okay. If, however, his sadness does not stem from anxiety over sins that he has committed, but from the fact that sinful thoughts and desires enter his mind, then, on the contrary, he should be happy with his lot. For although these sinful impulses enter his mind, he averts his attention from them and thereby fulfills the injunction, "You shall not follow after your heart and after your eyes, by which you go astray." Bamidbar, Numbers. The above verse surely does not speak of tzedakим, referring to them as, quote, going astray, but for Beinanim, like himself, in whose mind there do enter erotic thoughts, whether of an innocent nature or otherwise, and when he averts his mind from them, he fulfills this commandment. Consequently, he should rejoice at his compliance with the injunction, just as he does when performing the actual positive precept.
So here is something so incredible. It's so incredible. The Alter is saying, if you're getting this rut where you're beating yourself up over something, and the Alter uses the idea of machshava zaras, erotic thoughts or negative thoughts, like thoughts that don't belong where they belong, right? And you're desiring something that you know is not for you. You pass the KFC or the cheeseburger and you just want a cheeseburger and you feel really horrible about it. Like, all you want is this cheeseburger, right? Let's say, okay? So it can lead to a negative place where you're just beating yourself up. Why am I doing this? Why do I have these thoughts? Who am I? What kind of person am I? Why am I not a productive member of society? Why can everyone else get it together and I can't, right? So we have to remember that it's not that you feel bad, let's say, that you did the thing you did, or you are desiring the thing you shouldn't have, right? He's actually, the Alter Rebbe is saying, if you're just focusing on the negative part, not healthy. Take a moment and celebrate the fact that you are a human being and you are in the game, you are struggling, you are in the battle, you are working, you are a work in progress. And I'll never forget this, and we'll end with this story and this idea that I was in at a high school. I go there for Shabbatons, and I was in LA. And one of the girls asked a really good question. She said, what if I have this thing that I keep getting, keep making this resolution. I'm trying to stop this certain behavior, whatever, things I watch, whatever, I keep on trying and I can't stop. I just can't. I'm watching movies I shouldn't watch, whatever. I just can't stop myself. And I keep making resolutions and I keep not getting there. I can't break the habit. And she's like, and I just feel so bad about it. Like, what kind of loser am I? Like, why can't I do it? And what's happening, it's literally like Alter Rebbe describes in Tanya. Her Yetzer Hara, her negative energy, has managed to trap her to a place where she not only does what's bad, but she feels embarrassed about it. She feels guilty over it, and she can't stop it. And she feels like a loser for feeling guilty for not stopping, for not being able to. Stuck in that vicious cycle. So I told her I said, look, I didn't tell her all this. I'm telling you all this. All I said to her is, let's stop for a second before we discuss how you can walk away and actually develop practical skills to get through this or get beyond it. Leave it in the past. Let's stop for a minute and celebrate the fact that right now you are serving Hashem. She's like, what? Like, she looked at me like I fell from the roof, She's like, no. I said, do you not remember in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says that at the moment, now we're not talking about a tzaddik, but at the moment that a Beinoni is in the battle for right, for wrong, what's right and what's wrong, he is literally serving Hashem the same as when he's giving tzedakah, the same as when he's davening, the same as when he's performing an active mitzvah. Because there's a separate of the 613 mitzvot that the Alter Rebbe quotes here, Lo sasuru acharei lavavchem v'acharei einechem. There's a mitzvah. Don't just pursue what your heart wants and what your eye sees. So when you are in the act of trying to overcome, you are holy and doing an actual mitzvah. Now, with that knowledge that you're in the process, now let's talk about practical ways to do it. The girl was whoa, I never realized, because she was stuck in that cycle of shame and negativity. She wasn't able to propel herself forward. So we'll end with that. I hope this idea resonates. And I hope that once this week we could look at one area of our lives, whether with our families, with our spouses, with ourselves, with a mitzvah that we know we need to take on and overcome. And we can, instead of feeling guilty or bad about it, we can make an appointment with ourselves and say, I need to check in and figure this out. What's some strategy to overcome this? L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Thank you.
Do you see why I love this chapter? Because now I feel like
Yes.
we're getting to the meat and potatoes of practical tips and tools the Alter Rebbe gives us. And they're every single one of these that we discussed tonight is like such a takeaway. And every time I learn it, because you learn the Tanya every year, I'm like, I need to work on this in a practical way. L'chaim, ladies, have a wonderful night.
You too.
We continue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.